this is John from caveofprogramming.com and welcome to tutorial number 14 in the series of beginners Java tutorials from Cave of Programming. And in the last tutorial we looked at classes and objects, and in this tutorial we're going to look at subroutines in Java. So here I've got some code I created in the last tutorial, and this is just a little person class, and this person just has a name and an age, so it has some data associated with it. And later on I'm creating a couple of objects, a couple of people in other words, using this class and giving them names and ages, and then I'm printing out some information down here. But of course we all know that people have associated with them not only data like their name and their age and their mood and height and so on, but also we have behavior that we have things that we can do, and behavior in Java is modeled using subroutines, and a subroutine that's part of a class is called a method, which is the terminology is a little bit strange, but there you go. So let's give this person class some behavior. Let's enable them to do something. So I want to make this person be able to kind of say what their name is and how old they are. And I'm going to create just a little subroutine here that's going to be part of the class. So first I'll show you what to type, and what I recommend is that you just type this out without worrying too much about what it means. And once you get into the habit of creating just basic methods, then you'll start to understand the meaning behind them. So I'm going to type void here, and then I'm going to type the name that I want the method to have, so I can just make that up, and I'm going to call that speak. And methods should always start with a lowercase letter, and you just capitalize the first letter of every word in the subroutine. So I've only got one word here, so it'll have a lowercase letter. And the only exception to that is what we call a constructor, which we haven't looked at yet, but that has to have an uppercase letter because it has to have the same name as the class, but we'll look at that later. So you have void and the method name, and then you have a couple of round brackets like this, and then finally we have a open curly parentheses and then a closing curly parentheses. And when you create a method, I would strongly recommend that you type out all this stuff first. So don't open the parentheses and then start typing stuff in here. Just put all the parentheses you need in first, and then you won't forget them at the end. And in this method we can have some lines of code that are going to actually do stuff. Whenever you have parentheses like this, a pair of parentheses in Java, you should always indent by one tab the stuff that's between the parentheses. And if all this stuff about kind of parentheses and formatting seems a bit picky to you, believe me, it's not picky, and it will massively help you to improve your Java if you bear in mind what I'm saying here. And if you do screw up your formatting somehow, like if I type I could type sys out here, for example, hello, like this. This is screwed up because there's no indentation here, and a quick way to fix that in Eclipse is hold down Control Shift and press F for format, and it will automatically format your kind of method. So here I've got my basic method kind of framework, and in here I'm just going to type some code, and as you've just seen I could type sys out hello, and I can have as many lines of code in there as I want. And if I run that, well, nothing will happen now because I've just got a class and I've added a method, but I haven't called it anywhere. Because to run this behavior you have to actually call the method, or in other words you have to type some code that makes this run. So down here I've got two person objects, and I've got this one that I've given the name Joe and this one Sarah here. And let's make, now that I've added this method to the class, both of these person objects now have that method and they can run it. So let's make this person1 object run this method. I can type person1, and then you use a dot, just as with variables here, and then the name of the method. And the important difference is that when you're dealing with a variable that's part of a class or an object, you just have dot and the variable name. But with a method, you have dot, the method name, and then you always need these round brackets like this, and then of course a semicolon. So if I run this now, I'm going to get hello output here, and this is coming from my person1 object, and I could do the same again for this person2 object. I could say person2.speak, and this syntax just runs whatever code you put in this method. So in this case, this is running this code here because that's what I put in the method. So I run that and I get 2 hellos because I'm calling hello twice. And you can call it, of course, as many times as you like on the same object. It doesn't matter. Like I could put person1.speak again here, like this. But it's more interesting to actually make it do something with this data, for example. So I could say, now to access this data here, I don't have to do anything special. I can just use these names directly in the methods of my class, and the methods have access to this what we call instance data here, or the instance variables. So here I could say my name is, and I'll say plus name, and then I'll have an and here. I'll just say and I am plus age and space years old. Oh, and I missed out a plus there. So what I'm doing here is I'm just concatenating this data into a long string. So I've got this. This might look a bit confusing, but basically it's just, here's one bit of data here that I've typed in literally, and after a plus, here's another bit of data. There's a plus, another bit of data, a string that I've typed in, another bit of data after a plus, and then a plus, and a final bit of data. So this is just building up one long string here. And if I run this, so my objects both have their own particular copies of these variables. So the first one here is outputting the information that I set there and saying my name is Joe Bloggs, I'm 37 years old. And the second one here, I set the name to Sarah Smith and the age to 20. So now I'm getting that output down there. And you can put as many lines of code as you like in here. For example, I could have a for loop. Like I could say for int I equals 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. And I could put this in a loop, and I could just repeat that 3 times like that. So methods, you can put any code you like in there, and it can refer to your instance data here. If you're new to methods, which you may well be if you're watching this tutorial, it can be really easy to confuse them with data. And as I say, the methods always have these round brackets and the instance variables not. So I'd really strongly recommend just adding some methods to your classes and trying them out for yourself. And to finish off this tutorial, let's just add another one here. Like I could say, what shall I call it? I don't know. Say hello. So I'll capitalize the first letter of each word after the first one. The first one has a lowercase letter. And then because this is a new word, I give it a capital H. Round brackets like that, open the curly bracket. Eclipse has actually put in the closing curly bracket for me. And I could say, I don't know, like sys out, hello there. And again, if I run that, there's not going to be any change because I'm not invoking this method here, I'm not calling it. And to invoke it, I'd have to have an actual object, like this one, for example, and say, got my fingers on the wrong keys there, person1 dot say hello, like that. So I run that, and I've got a hello there, and I could have it down here as well. So pretty simple, but it will be confusing if it's the first time you've seen it. And actually it took me quite a long time when I first started programming to get my head around this idea that you could have these, define these methods and then call them somewhere else. So I definitely recommend playing around with it. And then in the next tutorial, we're going to look at getting data into methods and getting data out of it. So parameters and return types, in other words. But I think that's enough for this time. Have fun with that and join me again for the next tutorial. And until then, happy coding.